Hello, and thanks for joining us for this Farming Today podcast. I'm Kaz Graham, and in this edition, the Home Office says it won't allow highly skilled sheep shearers from Australia and New Zealand to work in the UK this spring. We hear concerns that we won't be able to shear the UK's 20 million sheep without them. And illegal meat seizures hit record highs at Dover.
This is a risky situation which can only get worse unless it's taken seriously. We're not giving up on this.
More from Alistair Carmichael, Chair of the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee, shortly. And a warning that sheep welfare could suffer after a Home Office decision not to grant visas for overseas shearers. First, though, we are talking about farm vets all this week on the programme. Now, until 1999, UK veterinary practices had to be owned by vets. But now 60% of practices are owned by companies, some of them large. The Competition and Markets Authority is currently investigating the impact that that's had on veterinary services for pets. But in Staffordshire, farm vet Ellen Widdowson decided to set up her own independent practice with a colleague after her previous employer was bought by a corporate group. She told Bob Hockenhull why independence suits her.
What's this one for, Sam?
PD.
Perfect. Yep, there we go, in calf. There's a number of different layers of corporate management, which was probably our trickiest thing to deal with. You wouldn't be able to make a decision on the ground at the time that you felt needed doing because it would have to get approval from your regional manager and various different managers. So everything was always very slow. There was also a number of restrictions on where we could buy things from, source things from.
Obviously, many practices have been taken over. They would argue that they have more capital and resources to invest in things like equipment, staff training, things that would ultimately benefit the farmer and the animals and give a better service.
I think that's probably a fair point. They do have a lot of resources behind them, but coming from the point of having set up a not small practice, we've got 11 people on the books now. We managed to set that up with capital investment from only myself and my partner Hannah, so we each put a chunk of money in and then we had bank backing from that. So it's probably slightly different in the small animal world where you need premises and much more costly equipment. For a farm practice we need vehicles, we need scanners. It's not actually a massive amount of capital outlay there to set it up. None of us are business people per se, so we're all vets first and then business people second, so it's been a steep learning curve in a lot of respects, but no, we're really enjoying it.
You set up your independent, but do you think the trend is going to be, as it has been in the last 20 years or so, for there to become more and more corporates?
To be honest, there's a lot of people in a similar position to myself in our careers that don't have the opportunity to buy into practices anymore because the vast majority of them have been sold. And so there is definitely a growing trend in both the farm and in the small animal side to actually just go it alone and set up your own independence. I think from an employee viewpoint, corporates have brought quite a lot to veterinary practice, so they offer a lot of extra perks, so enhanced maternity, sick pay, all that sort of thing that were never a given in the veterinary profession previously. We as a practice offer all those things, one because we have to attract the right vets, but also because it's the right thing to do to look after our staff and provide that. As a counteract to that, the corporates have to have a much higher turnover and profit than we do because they do employ such a large amount of people at that business side of the veterinary. So they have to pay for all that middle management, which we don't have to.
I guess you tend to have larger teams with corporates though, and that can foster collaboration and perhaps improve the work environment.
I think a large team is helpful from some respects. Like you say, there's different viewpoints there. One thing that we really like about our team is the fact that we are quite small, so we've only got 7 vets in total. It means that we all know all of our farmers, we all have a very good idea of what's going on each farm at an individual time. On some of the large corporate practices and independent practices as well, there are practices out there that are 20, 30 vets covering vast areas. Actually, the continuity of care on the farm is probably going to be less than on a and a smaller practice like our own, because you just don't have the same knowledge of those farms, because you are covering so many different ones. We are in it for the long haul, and we would like to be here in 10, 20 years' time, seeing the kids that are being born on farm now growing up and hopefully raising those farms themselves one day.
That was Ellen Widdowson speaking there to Bob Hockenhull. Now, a warning that sheep welfare may be severely compromised if skilled shearers from Australia and New Zealand aren't allowed into the UK this year. The Home Office has said it'll no longer give a special temporary concession to overseas sheep shearers. The National Association of Agricultural Contractors says the concession is essential to the farming industry. Sheep shearing is an international business. Skilled shearers travel the world, working in the Northern Hemisphere in our spring and in the Southern Hemisphere in what is our autumn, as I found out when I met Borders shearer Una Cameron, who introduced me to her team.
James Smith and Sophie Smith, they're a brother and sister from our local village at Bonchester. And the other girl's Kirscher, whose mum I worked with many years ago in New Zealand. She's from the Falkland Islands and she's here to do the wool for us this season.
Wow, so she's come over from the Falklands?
Yes.
I mean, it's a real international business, sheep shearing, isn't it?
Yes, we all know each other, we all travel around the world, and when you get older you also get to meet all your friends' children and hopefully they'll carry on in the industry to keep it going strong.
How skilled a job is sheep shearing?
Shearing's a very skilled job. Anyone can learn it though, but it just takes time to learn. It's very physically demanding. It's a good life skill to have, and you can travel the world and make money.
Well, that temporary international exchange of skilled shearers won't be happening this year unless the Home Office relents on its decision. Until this year, somewhere between 50 and 75 shearers have been allowed entry to the UK through this special concession for highly skilled workers who are a low immigration risk. Last year, that concession was only granted at the very last minute. Jill Hewitt is the Chief Executive of the National Association of Agricultural Contractors. She told me that a small number of overseas shearers can make a big difference.
Those shearers, although there aren't many of them, we estimate will shear probably 1.5 million sheep this season.
Really? 1.5 million? That's a huge number of sheep for not very many shearers.
Yes, and these guys come in, guys and girls, of course, come in, mainly from New Zealand and Australia. They can shear high numbers of sheep because they're doing this year round. So it's very different to what we do in this country. We've got some really talented, skilled shearers here who can shear a lot of sheep, but we haven't got enough of them.
And it's the sheer number of sheep that we need to get through in the UK, I guess, because it can be difficult to get a gap when you can shear. The sheep need to be dry. You need to have a good weather gap, don't you?
Yes, and we've got about 20 million sheep that need shearing. So it's a big number to get through. And we need shearers that have got experience and are skilled to make sure we're looking after animal welfare as well, and getting the sheep, the wool off, as you say, in that tight weather window that seems to get tighter every year.
There's been a concession allowing these shearers to come and work here in the shearing season for more than a decade now. What reasons have the Home Office given you for ending it, for making this change?
So I think the reason that they're giving us is that for the last 14 years, they're saying we haven't replaced those shearers by a UK workforce. And hands up, we haven't. I'd fully admit that. But it's almost impossible to do that because we've got shearers who are getting older and retiring. And while the British Wool are training new shearers every year, it's only a tiny number of those shearers that will go on to do professional shearing. And it's a very seasonal operation. So you've only got that 3-month period that you can shear. So to be a professional, it's very difficult. You either have to have a different job the rest of the year, or you also need to be travelling overseas, like the guys who we want to come in are doing the other way round.
What discussions are you having with the Home Office about this? I mean, do you think they're likely to budge? They did last year at the very, very last minute, but do you think it's going to happen again this year?
Never say never, Cass. We're talking to DEFRA, who are also working with the Home Office. British Wool, National Sheep Association, NFU, RSPCA have all been supporting this. So there's a real industry will to get this sorted.
And if these professional shearers don't get permission to enter the country, how do you see this year's shearing season panning out?
Well, I'm hoping that the Home Office staff will come and start shearing for us. But if they don't, there will be an opportunity for people to come under a youth mobility scheme. But it's a lot more expensive if you're only coming for 3 months. So it's about £1,000 each to come in. They can only come for 2 years, and there is cost each year they come in. So that is then our only option. Otherwise, we're going to have to somehow try and get those 1.5 million sheep shorn. And inevitably, there'll be some of those that won't get shorn.
And what happens if you don't shear a sheep?
It puts them at risk of maggots and also heat stress. So there are real animal welfare risks if we can't get them shorn, and can't get them shorn before it gets hotter as well this summer.
Jill Hewitt from the National Association of Agricultural Contractors. 34 tonnes of illegal meat and animal products were intercepted over the course of January at Dover docks. The Port Health Authority says it's the highest monthly total they have ever seized. Meanwhile, also in January, Suffolk Coastal Port Health Authority discovered 300 kilos of illegal pork at Harwich, found wrapped in foil and packed into suitcases. Now, these discoveries will be worrying to farmers because of the potential for diseases like foot and mouth and African swine fever to enter the country through illicit food products. The origin of the catastrophic 2001 outbreak of foot and mouth in the UK, which began 25 years ago this week, was thought to have been illegal meat fed in untreated pig swill. At the moment, personal imports of meat and dairy products from the EU to the UK are banned because of outbreaks of foot and mouth disease last year on the continent. The chair of the Commons Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee, Lib Dem MP Alistair Carmichael, gave us his reaction to the illegal meat seizures at Dover.
It's alarming, but everything I know and everything I hear about the illegal meat imports through the port of Dover is alarming. Now, I mean, there might be better explanations for this. It might be that we are now actually getting the volume of inspections and a bit better coordination between the different authorities that are involved here that means that we are discovering more of it, or maybe it is just, in fact, that the trade is getting bigger and bigger, and we are now seeing that as a consequence. Either way, I think these figures justify the concern that the Select Committee, the EFRA Select Committee that I chair, have been highlighting for months now, and it does really just illustrate the fact that this is a serious problem, and it's one that the government has got to take seriously and to tackle in a meaningful way. You know, we're not that far away now from the 25th anniversary of the outbreak of foot and mouth, which surely has got to remind us of just how bad the consequences for this can be when we get it wrong.
The Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs told us that it is fully committed to protecting our biosecurity and our farming industry. And they say we've tightened import rules, increased checks at the border and secured £3.1 million for Dover Port Health Authority this year alone. So they say that, in other words, there's more surveillance, therefore more illegal meat is being stopped from entering the country. But you reckon there's more that needs to be done?
There's an awful lot more. And remember, you do risk, by concentrating on the port of Dover, then starting a game of whack-a-mole, because if the meat's not getting through Dover, then they will find other routes into the country, albeit that we know that Dover is the place that faces the most acute challenges at the moment. So, you know, this is a risky situation which can only get worse unless it's taken seriously. And from the committee's point of view, we're not giving up on this.
Alistair Carmichael, MP, chair of the Environment Select Committee. And for this Friday's Farming Today, Charlotte will be in Devon, marking 25 years since the start of the 2001 foot and mouth epidemic. But in the meantime, that's it from us for this morning. I'm Kaz Graham, the producer is Sarah Swadling, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.